Hi, and welcome back to this channel. Today, we're going to take a look at the age of American gangsters, a period in U.S. history characterized by organized crime, violence, and corruption. From the 1920s to the 1940s, gangsters and their criminal empires dominated many cities and industries, and their legacy still resonates today. So, buckle up and let's dive into the world of American gangsters. Prohibition and the rise of gangsters. Prohibition was a nationwide constitutional ban on the production, importation, transportation, and sale of alcoholic beverages in the United States from 1920 to 1933. It was enacted as a result of the temperance movement, which sought to reduce the social problems associated with alcohol consumption. However, instead of reducing these problems, prohibition gave rise to a booming underground market for alcohol, controlled by organized crime. The mafia and other criminal organizations quickly seized the opportunity to profit from the illegal production and distribution of alcohol. They established networks for smuggling and bootlegging and engaged in violent turf wars with other gangs. The most infamous of these gangs was the Chicago Outfit, led by Al Capone. Capone's empire was worth millions of dollars, and he became one of the most powerful and notorious gangsters of the era. Gangsters also branched out into other illegal activities such as gambling and prostitution, further expanding their power and influence. They bribed politicians and law enforcement officials to turn a blind eye to their activities, and sometimes even employed violence and intimidation to maintain their control. However, the public's negative perception of gangsters grew as the violence associated with their activities increased. Eventually, the federal government stepped in to combat organized crime with the creation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the implementation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, RICO, Act. Infamous gangsters. The age of American gangsters was characterized by the emergence of infamous gangsters who rose to prominence during the Prohibition era. Al Capone, also known as Scarface, was one of the most notorious gangsters of this period. He was the leader of the Chicago Outfit, a powerful criminal organization that controlled the illegal sale and distribution of alcohol in Chicago. Capone was known for his brutal tactics and was responsible for numerous acts of violence, including the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. Another infamous gangster was Bugsy Siegel, who was a key figure in the development of organized crime in Las Vegas. Siegel was involved in illegal gambling, bootlegging, and drug trafficking, and was known for his extravagant lifestyle and love of Hollywood. He was assassinated in 1947, allegedly due to his mismanagement of the Flamingo Hotel and Casino. Lucky Luciano, also known as the father of organized crime, was another notorious gangster of the era. He was a key figure in the creation of the National Crime Syndicate, which was a network of criminal organizations that controlled various illegal activities across the country. Luciano was known for his strategic thinking and was instrumental in the development of modern organized crime. Overall, the age of American gangsters was marked by the rise of powerful and ruthless criminal figures who used violence, corruption, and intimidation to control illegal activities such as the sale and distribution of alcohol, gambling, and prostitution. Their exploits captured the public imagination and continue to be the subject of fascination in popular culture. Gang wars and turf battles. The Chicago Gang War of the 1920s was one of the most notorious and deadly turf battles in the history of American organized crime. The conflict was fought between two powerful criminal organizations, the North Side Gang, led by George "Bugs" Moran, and the South Side Gang, led by Al Capone. The two gangs fought for control over bootlegging, gambling, and other illegal activities in the city of Chicago. The gang war began in 1924 when the North Side Gang attempted to expand its bootlegging operations into the South Side territory, which was already controlled by Capone and his gang. This led to a series of violent confrontations between the two sides, with each side carrying out assassinations, bombings, and other violent acts to eliminate their rivals. One of the most infamous incidents of the gang war was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. The North Side Gang, led by Moran, planned to assassinate Capone and his top lieutenants, but Capone learned of the plan and set a trap for the North Side Gang. On February 14, 1929, 7 members of the North Side Gang were lured to a warehouse in Chicago under the guise of a shipment of stolen whiskey. When they arrived, they were ambushed by Capone's men, who shot them all dead in a hail of gunfire. The violence and bloodshed of the gang war eventually caught the attention of law enforcement, and the federal government began to crack down on organized crime in the 1930s. Capone was eventually convicted of tax evasion and sent to prison, effectively ending his reign as the kingpin of the Chicago underworld. The North Side Gang also suffered heavy losses and eventually disbanded, marking the end of the Chicago Gang War and the beginning of the decline of the age of American gangsters. Corruption and politics. During the age of American gangsters, corruption was rampant and had a profound impact on politics and law enforcement. The rise of powerful criminal organizations, such as the Mafia, brought with it a vast amount of wealth and influence, which they used to their advantage. They bribed politicians and law enforcement officials to look the other way or to work in their favor. They also used violence and intimidation to silence opponents and ensure their continued power. One of the most notorious examples of this corruption was the relationship between Al Capone and the Chicago mayor, William Hale Thompson. Capone, who controlled much of the illegal activity in Chicago during the Prohibition era, was able to bribe and intimidate officials, including the mayor, to turn a blind eye to his illegal activities. In return, Capone and his associates were able to operate with relative impunity. The corruption extended beyond just local politics and law enforcement. Gangsters were also able to influence national politics through their financial contributions and connections. They were able to gain access to politicians, who often turned a blind eye to their illegal activities in exchange for financial support for their campaigns. The pervasive corruption during the age of American gangsters eroded the public's trust in government and law enforcement. It was a time when citizens began to question the legitimacy of their institutions and whether they were serving the interests of the people or those of powerful criminal organizations. The corruption also had long-lasting effects on American politics, contributing to the passage of anti-corruption laws and the strengthening of regulatory agencies. The end of an era. The end of Prohibition in 1933 and the crackdown on organized crime by law enforcement agencies marked the end of the age of American gangsters. The repeal of Prohibition ended the need for illegal production and distribution of alcohol, which was the main source of income for many criminal organizations. This was a significant blow to the Mafia, as it had been their primary source of power and wealth. Law enforcement agencies also began to take more aggressive action against organized crime, leading to the arrest and imprisonment of many high-ranking gangsters. This included Al Capone, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison for tax evasion in 1931. The government also passed a series of laws that made it easier to prosecute gangsters for racketeering and other criminal activities. The decline of the Mafia's power and influence led to a shift in organized crime in the United States. Instead of large criminal organizations, smaller, more decentralized groups emerged, focusing on specific criminal activities such as drug trafficking or money laundering. The impact of the age of American gangsters in our days. The age of American gangsters has had a significant impact on American culture and society, even to this day. Here are some examples. 1. The exploits of American gangsters continue to capture the imagination of people around the world. Countless movies, TV shows, books, and video games have been made about gangsters such as Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, and Bugsy Siegel, showcasing their lavish lifestyles, violent crimes, and dramatic downfall. Their stories continue to fascinate and entertain audiences. 2. The tactics used by law enforcement agencies to combat organized crime during the age of American gangsters have had a lasting impact. The FBI, for example, was created in response to the rising threat of organized crime. Their investigations and strategies have evolved over the years, but the lessons learned during this period still influence their work today. 3. The corruption and collusion between organized crime and politicians during the age of American gangsters have left a stain on American politics. The public's trust in government and law enforcement was eroded, and the need for transparency and accountability in government became more apparent. 4. The failure of prohibition to curb alcohol consumption and the rise of organized crime during that time have influenced the way lawmakers approach drug policy and prohibition today. Overall, the age of American gangsters has left a lasting impact on American society, culture, and politics. Its legacy continues to be studied, debated, and depicted in various films and shows.